Patent White, thank you.
It works the second ago.
Can I get a new one?
It is 2 years old.
It's time for a new one.
Thank you. Well, welcome, everybody. My name is Lorraine Fontana. I'm a member of the Social Justice Guild here and the Indigenous Peoples Committee. I would like to tell you that our musician for today is an original First E member, Dr. Jean Heinrich. And she will let us know what our first song is.
Okay. Our first song is, God, these things are awful to sing in, aren't they? Yeah. Our first song is Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, page 105. And please ignore the words in the book. We're going to start out the first verse, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. The second verse we'll do, Ain't Gonna Let No Lies Turn Me Around. The next one we'll do is Ain't Gonna Let War Criminals. Okay? Okay, and if you think of one that you need us to sing, holler it out.
And that's page 105. Stand if you're willing and able. Hello, welcome again. Welcome to First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. We are a philosophically based spiritual community based in both feminist principles and existentialist philosophy. Today, Libby Ware will be talking to us a lot about some former Black women in our history. And I wanted to start off reading something from a more recent, current Black woman in as making history. Full citizenship rights are the bare minimum one should expect from the government. Yet for 2/3 of our history, full citizenship was denied to those who built this country from theory to life. African slaves and Chinese workers and Native American environmentalists and Latino gauchos and Irish farmers, and half the population women. Over the course of our history, these men and women, these patriots and defenders of liberty, have been denied the most profound currency of citizenship, power. Because let's be honest, that's the core of this fight. The right to be seen, the right to be heard, the right to direct the course of history are markers of power. In the United States, democracy makes politics one of the key levers to exercising power. And that, of course, is Stacey Abrams. And that's from her book, Our Time Is Now, Power, Purpose, and the Fight for a Fair America. I would like to welcome any newcomers, people that are here for the first time or maybe back after a long time. If anyone is in that category would like to stand and tell us your name and how you got to be here. Yes. Stand up, tell us your name, boy.
Marshall.
Marshall.
Are you here with someone today? Tell us who they are.
They are Lolo and Mama.
Welcome to you all. Thank you. We also like to just celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and sing to people who have them. Is there anybody here today who has in this past week a celebration, birthday or anniversary? And I was hoping Wade would be here. His birthday is...
He's in Minneapolis,
He's
he said.
celebrating with family out of town.
I'm sorry?
He's up in Minneapolis with family.
Well, that's a good reason why he's here. Yeah.
Today is actually my mother's birthday, but she died in '98. She would have been 115 though.
Wow.
Yeah. She didn't make it.
Happy memorial birthday to her. Okay, well, in that case,
Ray,
yes, I'm sorry.
would you read the land acknowledgement statement, please?
Yes, I'm very sorry.
Cool.
It's here, and I'm very sorry. In fact, I knew I was going to forget something. I'm not very, I'm discombobulated lately a lot. So yes, we are a spiritual community based in philosophically feminist and existentialist principles dedicated to human liberation. But we also make our spiritual home in this old stone church, which was hand-built by African-American Antioch East Baptist church members. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove these African-Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Now, if you're new and you want the fuller versions of those, much more about the history of this sanctuary, this building, and of the community in general, this land that we are all on, please visit our website, and there's a full version of the land acknowledgement statement and the story of the Old Stone Church. We will be hearing from Libby about a woman who I'm going to read a quote from and some information on, because she's not the crime person that Libby will be speaking about, but we want to acknowledge her for sure. This is from Nanny Helen Burroughs, written in 1915. When the ballot is put into the hands of women, the world is going to make a correct estimate of the Negro woman. It will find her a tower of strength of which poets have never sung, orators have never spoken, and scholars have never written. She talked a lot about her own Christianity and Christian upbringing and her feelings about that. Here are a couple of quotes that relate to what we're doing today. It's from the 12 Things Whites Must Stop Doing. Stop misrepresenting Genesis 9:19 to 27. The Bible does not say that God cursed Ham. It says that, quote, Noah cursed his son Ham. God did not even appear on the scene while Noah was drunk. Noah did the same kind of running off at the mouth that drunks usually do. Noah's cursing and assigning his son to everlasting servitude was about as effective as would be the cursing and assignment to servitude of any son by any father today. God has never cursed any race. Man must stop cursing and destroying any race under the pretext that he is only helping God carry out his plan and purpose. On this point, God speaks in Galatians 6:7, without equivocation. Quote, be not deceived. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. Races and nations always reap in various ways the ungodly things that they sow. And one more. Stop putting all kinds of barriers in the way of the progress of the Negro race, and then declaring that America's high purpose is to build, quote, one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. 1915, you know. So we have another congregational song, Jean.
And let's sing Freedom is a Constant Struggle, page 52.
Page 52, stand if you're willing and able. any youth here today, any children or people young at heart who wants to go downstairs for the youth program, now's the time to do it. Feel free to do that.
Lorraine, that requires a week in advance reservation. Childcare requires a week in advance reservation now.
Okay, well, I thought maybe there were, but no, that isn't okay, that's fine. If anybody has an announcement to make near the end of the service, please write it down, bring it to me sometime during the service, and we'll make those announcements at the end. Usually, I don't think Marcia has shown up. Usually Reverend Marcia Lichner would be able to speak a few words now. She did tell us this morning that she had some repair person coming who was late and she might not get here in time. So that might be what happened. So next week we will wait for Marcia. But I will then read another quote from another sister that Libby has given me. This is from Nanny Helen Burroughs. Oh, that's the same woman, I'm sorry. That was the other one. Publish this from the housetop. From now on, the Negro woman must not sit and wait for white women to fight for freedom and opportunity in the hopes that if the situation for women is improved, that Negro women will automatically benefit. Never. As one class of women moves up, there will be another class of women lower down who will step into the places made vacant. That was in 1939. I'm going to switch around a little bit the order of service to have us joys, sorrows, and milestones before the silent meditation. So usually we take a few minutes to let people share with us some joys and sorrows that they have. And we'll do that right now. Does anybody have any joys and sorrows to share with everybody?
Yeah, this might seem silly to some people, but it's a true joy for me. I wore my last pair of Vans literally for 25 or 30 years. And they were completely battered and worn out. And for Christmas, my daughter got me not only a new pair of Vans, but socks to go with them. So that was just like, that gave me so much joy. I also have, well, it's not joy or sorrow, it's just that. Went to the eye doctor last week and I had to take cataract surgery. So I'm going tomorrow for my consultation. And I don't think it's really a bad thing. I've heard after people get it that they see a whole lot better. Thanks a lot.
And I want you to sing this. I want you to sing a part with me. So let's get into the groove first. Hey,
Hey,
collection. I'd like to just mention names of some current Black sisters. In addition to Stacey Abrams, who we all know, we all remember her name and know her. Of course, she not only headed the Georgia House delegation for a while, but she ran for governor, and Kevin Lisfield should have won. Got very close here in Georgia. But others have also been key in Georgia's get out to vote and voting rights in general. So I wanted to mention names. Nsé Ufot is the executive director of the New Georgia Project. Helen Butler, who is the executive director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Melanie Campbell, president of the National Coalition on Black Participation and the Black Women's Roundtable. Tamika Atkins of Pro-Georgia and the Women of Color Initiative. Latasha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter. April Richardson, director and national legal chief of staff of the Black Voters Matter. Deborah Scott of Georgia Stand Up. Hillary Holly, organizing director for Fair Fight Action. And then there are always women who don't get the title, they aren't ED or they aren't, directors, but they do all the fighting. An example is Felicia Davis, who's this organizing fighter in Clayton County, and a lot of the other surrounding Atlantic counties have had some amazing women doing that work. So now we will have an offering. Someone will come up with our main speaker, who today is Libby Ware, a longtime member of our congregation, about 20 years now, right? She lived the first 5 years of her life in West Virginia, and then moved to Florida, but spent some childhood summers in the Blue Ridge Mountains of West Virginia. She's the owner of Toad Lily Books, an antiquarian book business, and is also a book collector and writer. Her first published novel, Lone, was a finalist in the Lambda Literary Awards contest, and it won the ALA Stonewall Barbara Giddings Honor Award. She lives in Atlanta with her 2 dogs and only a mile away from Charlene Ball, her wife, and writing partner, with whom she wrote Murder at the Estate Sale under the name Lily Charles. Lily.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank 2 people. I forgot to bring the other book, but Charlene Ball gave me a book a few years ago about Nanny Helen Burroughs, and that's the person that Lorraine had quoted from. And Linda Bell, who lent me a book called My Face is Black is True, about Callie House. And actually, I was kind of rearranging some shelves. I have like 4 shelves that are my to-be-read pile. And I found those books, and I'm like, oh, these are people that nobody now has heard of, or mostly hadn't. So when I got the Jan's newsletter, and she had some women activists, I'm like, oh my God, I hope she doesn't have my 2 women. And, she had very interesting women in it, but not the 2 I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start with Callie House. And she was born into slavery, was pretty much a toddler when the war ended. Her father had run away and followed the Union Army. And this was kind of common, that enslaved people would follow the Union Army, and then the Union Army, of course, would have them dig trenches and do other kind of manual labor. Any women that joined up with the Union, they would be cooks or laundresses. So after the war, there was a pension bureau set up for Union soldiers. And, let me add this, but actually he did join a colored corps, that's what they call it, the colored corps, that was part of the Union Army, and he fought down in Port Huron in Louisiana. So he actually did join, but then he was unable to get his pension. And after he died, you know, his widow and children would have been entitled to a pension. But because people born into slavery, they didn't have birth certificates, they didn't have marriage licenses, so there was really no way to corroborate, you know, that you were related to this person who had died, the soldier. So we all know about Harriet Tubman, and mostly what we hear about her is how she had, you know, used the Underground Railroad and, you know, helped thousands of enslaved people escape. But during the war, she worked for the Union Army. She was a cook, she was a scout, she was a spy, she was a nurse. Even she could not get a pension. But when her husband died, he had also been in the Union Army, she did get a benefit. Now she got $20 a month. The mandated rate for a widow was $25 a month. So I think it's really ironic that Harriet Tubman is going to be on the next issue of the $20 bill. So I think it's appropriate. So when Callie House was an adult, she lived in Nashville, and somebody came around and they were selling this pamphlet that was about pensions for ex-slaves. Because the whole idea was, you know, these people were free, well, they didn't have, you know, a penny to their name. They probably only had the clothes on their back, maybe a few household items, and yet they were expected to make it in the world. And so it was really considered like past due wages, where they had done all this, you know, unpaid labor for years. The man who wrote this pamphlet actually was a white man from Selma, Alabama. And he used his political connections to get a bill introduced into Congress. He didn't do it out of any, you know, love for justice or for black people in particular. He did it because this is kind of what I call the trickle-down theory of economics, where he felt that if people kind of at the lowest level had money, they had spending power, and then that would improve the economy overall. So that was his reasoning. Now, when it was introduced into Congress, there were actually 3 black congressmen at that time. None of them supported the bill. They both focused pretty much on voting rights, which is important, education, which is also important, but not the pensions for ex-slaves. And I think that probably, thinking strategically, they may have felt this is a radical idea. And they didn't want to alienate any white congressmen that they hoped to get alliances with. But that's just my interpretation of that. The original idea of pensions or recompense to freed slaves was, you know, everybody's heard about the 40 acres and a mule. Well, that actually only happened in one place. Because when Sherman rode through Georgia, when he got to the coast, he offered a field order, is what they called it, mandating that the enslaved people who were on the plantations that had just been, you know, taken over by him, that they would each get, that each adult male was able to get a portion of that land. As a matter of fact, one of our speakers that we've had here, Althea Sumter, she's talked to us about the Gullah Geechee culture, and she actually still owns a plot of that land that you know, her ancestors had worked on, and she's really proud of that. So Callie House, when, you know, after it failed, Callie House and some other people in Nashville started this organization. And it was ex-slaves, mutual benefit. I thought I had it written down. Anyway, yeah, okay. Ex-slave mutual relief, bounty, and pension association. And the way it was set up is that the oldest people would get the most money. And then, people that were like from 60 to 70 would get another amount and went down. And then I think, the youngest people would get like maybe $5 a month. 70-year-olds could get $20 a month. Plus a bounty, and I'm not sure what that means in this context, but it was like a lump sum bounty that was given to them. So they started this organization, and a lot of local places sprung up around the country. And then what happened, they had a convention. When she came home from the convention, she had a letter from the post office. There was a post office department. And they said that her organization was prohibited from sending or receiving any mail. The post offices were instructed to not cash any money orders that were made out to her or to the organization. And she was actually arrested because somebody had sent her a money order for $1.80, which was dues, for some people. And she was indicted. She was going to go to trial. They tried to convince her to make a plea bargain. She said, absolutely not. I'm not guilty of anything. The Constitution gives me the right to petition, to redress my grievances. It's the right of assembly. And so she went to trial. She was found guilty. The maximum fine was $1,000, and she could have been put away for 5 years. But the judge was kind of lenient. He put her away for 1 year. She went to Missouri State Prison, which was really a men's prison. They didn't have any women's prisons at that time. They just had a wing. And part of the time that she was there, one of her fellow inmates was Emma Goldman. Anyway, she was let out after 10 months, and she pretty much quit the cause back then, just because, obviously she was really the target of their investigations. And so she wanted to, keep a low profile. But, a lot of the local organizations kept on, and as we know, we still don't have reparations. Now, I believe that John Conyers started this bill that he introduced like every year that he was in office, and it just goes nowhere. So Lorraine read some quotes from Nannie Helen Burroughs, and her cause was education. She was born 2 years after Reconstruction, and she was a very bright child, and so her family moved to D.C. so that she could go to this school. And she wanted to be a teacher. She graduated, and she was very dark-skinned, and she could not get a job. And she attributed this to the fact that most of the teachers were light-skinned and that she was being discriminated against, because of the tone of her skin. So what she did is she started a school for girls. It was a girls' industrial school where they could learn a trade. At that time, there was kind of a disagreement going on between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington thought it was very important for black people to have a technical education. Learn some kind of trade, they get out of school, they're ready to go with the trade. W.E.B. Du Bois, who had a PhD and was a professor at Atlanta University, he believed no, black people should be able to learn whatever they want. They should be able to, go into, upper education and, be able to do that. And I always thought, well, why is this even a feud? Because to me, it's like both and. Some people are going to be more suited to one, than the other. And Nannie Burroughs pretty much agreed. She said, if there's a child who loves classics above everything else, then certainly he should go to the best college. Now, she eventually started a national industrial school in Washington, D.C. And, she did not look down on homemakers or people that were going to do the domestic trades. So she, but she felt that it was very important that children get both, that they get the classical education, that they learn critical thinking, and that they also have something that they can work at when they get out. And so she thought that domestic work should be a profession. And because there were, immigrants coming into the country and there was more competition for that type of job, she felt that, if they had learned certain things about the domestic arts in college, then they would be able to make their way in the world. And like Lorraine said, she was very much influenced by Christianity. But what she thought, her Christian belief was that she should be of service. And so that's kind of how she based her life. She was a very prolific writer, very prolific speaker. She spoke at the Republican convention. And of course, we know back then that the Republicans were the more liberals of the Democrats, especially the Southern Democrats were the more conservative party. Anyway, so she was very well known in her time, and she had worked with Anna Julia Cooper, Carter Woodson, W.E.B. Du Bois. They all worked together to come up with a comprehensive, lesson plan for black students, and that she also taught African American history. And so, she worked with these very well-known people, but for some reason, she's not really remembered today. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about these two women. Thank you. A couple of announcements.